This episode of Around the Oval is brought to you by Todd Pennington with Renovation Mortgage. Hey, Ohio State fans, Alex Gleitman here, back with another edition of Around the Oval, brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. We are about halfway to National Signing Day, the early signing period in December, the larger, formerly the only signing day, but now the official National Signing Day in early February. Most people will probably sign in December, but either way, now sitting in early July, we're about halfway there through the 2021 year for the 2022 recruiting cycle. Ohio State has 16 commits, the consensus number one class in the country, but there's still room, for this program to add to what could be not only the best class in Ohio State history, but possibly the best class ever, depending on the ranking service and who they potentially finish with. We'll use the number 25-ish. Right around 9 spots left. And, while they have 16 guys in, maybe not all 16 end up signing with Ohio State. It's going to be interesting to see how some of that goes, especially when you look at some of those guys in the defensive backfield. But to talk about the Ohio State class as it is and who may be added to it, we bring on our very own Marc Givler, the godfather of Buckeye Scoop. Marc, thanks for joining the show. Excited to talk a little Buckeyes recruiting with you.
Yeah, great. I think great time for this type of topic as well. I think, it's been a crazy month of June with all the visits. I think a lot of guys are looking at making decisions in the next, maybe 30 to 45 days in terms of maybe getting something over with before their senior season. So I could see a wave of action kind of around the country here the next month or so.
Yeah, for sure. And you were just out west. Well, you were actually in a couple places. You were in Florida checking out some young guys. And then obviously Ohio State's possibly their biggest target in 2023, Richard Young. And then you were out west watching Quinn Ewers. We'll talk about him in a little bit at the Elite 11. And then watching a few other Buckeyes, future Buckeyes, CJ Hicks, Keon Grays, maybe a few others that we'll talk about today at the opening finals, which was a little bit different than probably what we've seen in the past and what fans are used to. But it's better than last year when there was nothing. So little 7-on-7 tournament for the opening finals. You were out there, so you'll definitely have some insight, I know, on some of the guys that Ohio State's still looking at to add into their class. And so with that said, we'll get into it. I think, we talked before we logged on and started recording that there's 4 positions that we would normally start off with that are pretty much done. Quarterback, Quinn Ewers; running back, Dallin Hayden; wide receivers, Caleb Burton, Caleb Brown, Keon Grays, and Kojo Antwi, and then tight ends, Bennett Christian and Benji Gosnell. It's my opinion, all those guys are rock solid to Ohio State. I have them all signing with Ohio State. I don't think they add any more at any of those positions. In agreement there, and we can move on to the rest of it, or any other thoughts?
Yeah, there's not much reason to think those guys, that there's not any solid commitments there. I think everybody is in, and the camp season, I think, showed that as well. Not a lot of evaluating of those positions in the 2022 class.
Yeah. The only thing I like Bank, I just keep going back to that Kenrich workout. And It was just weird at camp, in-state Ohio kid, Charlie Kenrich, I think committed to Purdue now. Not that an Ohio State offer wouldn't change that, I don't think, but he worked out for Kevin Wilson. Just kind of odd with 2 tight ends committed. Maybe something to just keep an eye on moving forward. But I think, in talking to Bennett Christian, he'll be back up at the end of July. Seems Benji Gosnell is pretty locked in as well. So, let's move on. Talk about the offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, and defensive backs. We'll start with the offensive line. To me, maybe I'll have its second biggest position of need, maybe outside of the defensive line, which I really think they need to reload with talent in this current cycle. Right now, they have 1 commit on the offensive line, Tegris Shbola, but there's probably like 8 to 10 guys that they're in the mix for. Some people are saying out there, I know, we're all friends with Berm. I know he's been saying and pretty adamant about Ohio State taking 3 guys, and some others in the industry saying the same. I think you, me, Bank, Mick, Dom, I think we all feel that. To me, I think they got to take at least 4 based on who they could get and also what the need is. And then I think they possibly could go up to 5 in this class. So with that said, what are your thoughts on what the final number would be? And who do you think finishes out this class on the offensive line for Ohio State?
Yeah, I don't see how they don't take 4. Gosh, I guess that, we got this free year that I guess is still going to be in play here for these college guys this offseason to kind of see who takes it after the season. Just Petit Freer pull a Thayer Munford and shake everything up. I mean, is something like that in the works? If so, I guess maybe at that point you can reevaluate things, but I don't know how they don't take 4. I'm kind of piggybacking off of you and Bank here, but it's looking very good for George Fitzpatrick at this point. And then I start to look at, okay, who's likely and who is unlikely. And then that's where the line get very blurry. I think Addison Nichols is still very much in play. I think you look at like an Emil Wagner very much in play. I think Ernest Green, that's not going to be a thing that, gets locked up here this summer. Ernest is making his official visit for the Oregon game. I think they're actually in a really strong position with Ernest Green. I was at the school here this past week, and I do think Ernest is someone they would wait for. So that could be interesting. Would they take 3 and then just chase Ernest Green, or would they take 4 and make it 5 if they could get Ernest Green late in the process? Because some of these guys, I think they'll want answers from in the next month or two, but I do think Ernest has a little bit of runway here. And then from there, it's just, gosh, can they pull off some of these upsets and see where it goes from there? But I kind of like, like I said, I kind of like where they're at with Nichols, and I kind of like where they're at with Ernest Green. And, the George Fitzpatrick commitment, the announcement will be coming soon. And that's looking very good for Ohio State right now.
Yeah, I think they take 4, and I think they might take 5 if it's the right 5. How do you say no if Addison Nichols, Cam Dewberry, Billy Schrauth, and Ernest Green all want in? How do you say no to that?
I forgot to mention Dewberry. I knew I was missing. I'm like, who am I missing? Somebody? Yeah, Dewberry's that's one that the Texas people were like, he's gonna talk up Ohio State, but he's ultimately gonna end up at A&M or somewhere like that, and that's looking pretty good. So it's like they've got like 8 irons in the fire right now, and you can't take all of them.
Yeah, and it's hard. Like, how do you let an in-state kid with a ton of high upside like Emil Wagner at Uber Heights Wayne? How do you say no to him and say, sorry, the inn's closed? I mean, I think they might do that. I have a feeling they might have to do that. But, I think Dewberry, I think Ernest Green, I feel pretty good about those guys. And then George Fitzpatrick, and that's 4. And then, I think they were not expecting to be where they are with Billy Schrauth. From what I'm hearing, it's Wisconsin and Ohio State, not Wisconsin and Notre Dame, like everyone, even Billy before his Ohio State visit thought. And if a guy like that, who's really, really good, wants in, how do you say no to him? And so I think Fitzpatrick, Dewberry, Tegra, and and Fitzpatrick, Dewberry, Green, and Tegra are my 4. I think Addison Nichols, they still have a great shot at. I'm hearing a lot about Tennessee. We'll see where that nets out. But I think, to your point, there's a lot of irons in the fire. And then there's Tyler Booker and Zach Rice, and I don't expect them to get either of those guys. But you add 2 more, and you're talking about, as I said, about 8 to 10 guys, and they only need 3, maybe 4 of them more, and I think they could get them. So it's going to be interesting to see how that position finishes out. But right now, I think they're in a really good spot to have a really strong class in the offensive line. Now, defensive line, they don't have anyone. I think they're going to take 5. I think probably 3 guys on the inside and then 2 ends, maybe 3 ends, I guess, if they got good enough. But I think defensive end was like the number 1 biggest need for this team. I think you think about Zach Harrison could leave after this year. I don't know who's going to use extra eligibility and whatnot, but Tyler Friday, you have to imagine Tyreek Smith, who flirted with leaving last year, is going to leave. You have Tyler Friday, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Tyreek Smith. All those guys could be gone, as well as Zach Harrison after this year, right? So who does that leave? It leaves Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau. So, you know, I tend to think someone like a Javonte Jean-Baptiste may come back and have his chance to shine, and maybe even a Tyler Friday. I don't know, but I think they have a big need to add at least two immediate impact defensive ends. What are your thoughts on that? Who do you think they end up with?
Yeah, the way I've kind of been framing defensive line recruiting is I think we know they're going to take 2 defensive tackles at least, and we know they're going to take at least 2 defensive ends. So there's 4. From there, I think you're going best available. It could be a flex guy. You know, Caden Curry's essentially a flex guy at this point. I mean, he's not like this big run stopping defensive tackle. He's a guy who could maybe play some base end for you. So I think at that point, so now that gets you to 5. That's what I'm confident in. 2 tackles, 2 ends, 5th guy best available, could be an end, could be a tackle, could be a flex. And it wouldn't shock me if they went 6. If the dominoes fell the right way, I could put together a scenario where they'd almost have to take 6. But you know, to your point on defensive end, you know, look, it's Amari Abor, Eni White, Kenyatta Jackson. I think those are the 3 right now to really focus in on. And I don't see them turning any of those 3 away. I don't know how you turn any of those 3 away. Now, can they get all 3? I'm still not quite there yet on Eni White. I certainly believe they made up a massive amount of ground to the point that, you know, he's talking about this top 4 coming up. I would not have wanted a gun to my head to answer the question of, will Ohio State be in that top 4 before his visit? I might have lost my life. So that would not have been a scenario I wanted. Now I'm highly confident they're going to be on that top 4 now. So they've made up some serious ground. I'm not quite buying that yet. Alabama's made a great push for Abor. I still would not move off my Ohio State pick there. I just think there's so much. I just think he's so enamored with the development in Larry Johnson, but you know, you never count out Alabama and Nick Saban. You know, as someone told me recently, Nick Saban has started to kind of handle that one personally, so that always makes you pause a little bit. But you know, they're certainly in the game there, and then they're in the game with Kenyatta Jackson. I think they're probably top 2 with maybe Oklahoma. I think would be my handicapping of that. But so, you know, I think, you know, 2 of those guys would be amazing. 3 of those guys would be the dream.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because you look at it and you say, well, what if they could only get one of those guys or none of those guys? Where do they go? And I can't even think of another name right now that you feel confident in saying they like him and they have a great chance. So I think they get one of the 2 big guys, either White or Abor. I think Amari Abor, I think that would be my pick. I'm with you on Eni White. I think all I kept hearing this whole process is SEC. Even early when people were like, oh, Philly kid, he's going to go to Penn State. Even the Penn State people were saying, no, he's going to the SEC. And now I know there's some conflicting info. You know, Georgia's saying it's not going to be Georgia. Alabama's saying it's not going to be Alabama. And Ohio State's kind of the common denominator there, which is a little weird. And I do know they did make up ground. I'm just not there yet either. I think they made up ground. They're firmly in the game. Larry Johnson crushed the visit, did a great job presenting the whole, here's why you should not be a stand-up defensive end, you know, stand-up linebacker or whatever it is. And here's what I'm going to make you. But I do think that they get, let's just call it Amari Abor. And I think they do have a great chance at Kenyatta Jackson. Now, if Ryan Turner decides to go to Florida, does that screw things up with Kenyatta Jackson? I don't know. We've heard now that.
So, for sure.
I think so.
Would.
I think so too. Now, so that could play out over time, right? So there could be problems there. I don't know at defensive end. If I had to pick right now, I'd go with Amari Abor and I guess I'd throw Kenyatta Jackson in there. Now, defensive tackle, I think we all agree. Chris Mcclellan, Hero Canoe, and Caden Curry. To your point, maybe is Mcclellan. I see him as a 3 tech, but I know he wants to say he could play outside. Caden Curry, I think, is a little smaller of a frame type guy. I think he could play on the outside if they needed him to, especially on obvious rundowns, and be a true strong side end. So I think that that's the 5 that I would go with. And I think if that's the 5 they get, that's, you're grading this out. That's an A or A+ type of class. If they get White and Abor, that's an A++ class. So I think they're in good shape.
Yeah. I don't think you turn any of those 6 away though. Like if you could get all 6, I don't know how you would say no to any of those guys. I really don't. I just think you can just take the smallest class ever in 23 if you want. I just don't know how you'd say no to those guys. But I think I may have found, here could be the compromise. If things go a little haywire at defensive end, let's say you only get one of those 3 we talked about. You only get one of them. The other 2, White goes to the SEC, and then Abor or Kenyatta go elsewhere. You only get one of those guys. You could, what about this? What about, okay, let's say, let's just, for argument's sake, let's say it's Abor. You get Amari, and you take Caden Curry and you start him at end, and you take Mcclellan and Canoe, and then you go take Kenneth Grant. And that gets you to 5. And it may not be the defensive end class everybody wants, but you get one stud defensive end. The year after, you get Sawyer into a Maloau, and Curry, at least until he outgrows the position, can probably help you at defensive end. And then you can kind of push things to 23. I think that's like the plan B. And
then you beg Javonte Jean-Baptiste to come back.
Exactly. And that's your plan B, I think, if defensive end recruiting kind of goes off the rails a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And look, there's another guy who we're about to talk about in a minute, and Gabe Powers.
Yep.
Who I think grows into a defensive end. I know he doesn't want to hear that.
Right.
And they're probably not telling him that. And I think he will get every chance to stay at linebacker. I just think you look at the kid and you look at his frame and the length, and it's a Sam Hubbard type situation to me, where it's just inevitable once Mickey Marotti gets his hands on him that he's just going to be still explosive off the edge, but just too big to probably play anywhere else. And so we can talk about linebacker. I mean, CJ Hicks is in. He's elite. Possibly, I don't think you're talking number 1 player in the country, but I think you're at the point where you could probably argue top 10 talent in the country, and not blink an eye at it. And then you have Gabe Powers, who's, let's call it, linebacker, maybe defensive end. I think, they lost Hassan McCullough earlier in the process, and I think they liked Hassan. I don't think that they felt he was as good as maybe as he was ranked as highly on some services as, they felt he was a player they'd obviously take and then they would want in the class and would want to sign, but he wasn't irreplaceable. But I think the problem right now is this isn't a great linebacker class. And I think they're having trouble figuring out someone that they like, that they also have a realistic shot at. There's a few guys out there. They offer the kid from Utah. I think Carson Tabarachi is his name, something along those lines. Right. And then they Abdul Carter from Philly area. They had work out. They didn't offer him. What are your thoughts on linebacker? I think they do want to add one more, but right now I'm having a hard time figuring out who that might be.
Yeah, I think they do. I think they want to add one that they love. I don't think they want to add one that they just kind of like. And I think that's the problem right now. I think Carson Tabarachi's probably, if maybe the most likely at this point of what's available, what's out there. And that was kind of something I mentioned when McCullough decommitted, was I thought it stung a lot more than maybe I think people were a little surprised at how much I thought it stung. I was like, because I just don't know where else they're going to go. They put so much effort into such a small group of linebackers. And, people talking about Sean Murphy, and I'm like, that doesn't replace McCullough. They are totally different players. That's not a replacement for McCullough. So it just, that's where I've been at on this. Abdul Carter, I think they could probably swoop in late and get if they wanted him. I'm sure they're going to watch senior film. Looks great physically, but he's almost like a classic, like almost like a throwback, like someone who would have maybe played with Bobby Carpenter and AJ Hawk, and maybe not so much now in the spread offense era. There's the David Bailey kid from Modern Day, who I'm still not even quite sure exists. I don't think he has social media. He doesn't do interviews. I've had people out west tell me that he's probably going to Stanford because he's a major academic kid. And so I don't know. I know they're interested there. I don't know if there's any track. I have not heard of any real traction being gained there recently. So it's going to be fascinating. And so, yeah, they got to look at Carson Tabarachi, a few weeks ago. And that would seem like the leader in the clubhouse right now if they add another guy. But I think they're going to look at all sorts of options this fall. And I guess one thing you have to consider is, when the coaching carousel starts turning in October and November, who that's currently not available becomes available. As far as, a coaching change causing a decommitment or something like that. So I think that's gonna be something to watch in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. You make a good point on Dasan. While, I think they liked him, didn't maybe love him as much as, the rankings said. I do think that that's a great point. And yeah, senior film could be a big deal. They got a lot of kids at camp. They didn't get everyone at camp, and seasons were weird last year and things like that. I saw Sean Murphy in May. I think he's the type of kid where, I understand, he's your traditional Mike and they're looking for a little bit more versatility and, kind of, it's really more of a 4-2-5 system now that they're running, not really a true 4-3. So I understand it, but I just think he ends up at LSU or Alabama, and you're watching him on TV on SEC or CBS on a Saturday night, and you're like, damn, this kid's good. I know he looked bad last year when you guys saw him. I thought he looked a lot better than what I saw from the video of that last year. I think Ohio State could get him if they want him. I still think that they can, even though they haven't loved him up in a long time. And I just, Youngstown native, his family's still there, and he's close with CJ Hicks. I think they could get him. So while they're saying no from everyone we talk to and that it's not going to happen or very, very unlikely, I still think that's one we got to monitor, because they could decide at the last minute, why not? And possibly get him. So last position group, and we'll end with this: defensive back. Ohio State has 5 guys committed, and you would think that they're done and over with. Surprisingly landing Terrence Brooks. They have Jaheim Singletary, Jair Brown, Ryan Turner at cornerback. They have Kai Stokes kind of as this versatile weapon who could play in a lot of different places. And then they're still in on a number of safeties. Xavier Wonkpa, with Zion Branch, Jake Pope, Markeith Williams. I mean, they had all 4 of those guys in on official visits. They canceled some safety visits. So to me, it tells you where they are with at least those guys. I personally feel good about Branch and Wonkpa, but we've been talking about possible decommitments and things changing and whatnot. Where do you see this defensive back class ending up when it's all said and done?
That's anyone's guess at this point. I think, strangely enough, Terrence Brooks might be their most solid guy because he just committed. And generally, guys who just commit their first thought after committing isn't where their next commitment's going to be. It's generally the rule, but
unless they're from Florida, right?
Yeah, unless they're from South Florida. I think things are in a decent spot with Jair Brown right now. I think that's going to stick for now. And then you got to see, I guess I'm fascinated by what are they going to do about Demoni Jackson? Because I am not really buying a lot of the hype there right now. We all knew he was going to take official visits. I mean, before he even committed to USC, we said, look, don't worry about where he commits right now. He's going to take the official visits later anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I don't know that Ohio State was ever as real for him as people said they were. I never really felt that one. So do you rock the boat and bring this kid in on a visit? And does that push someone over the ledge? Does that push probably maybe not a Singletary because he's just hyper competitive, but does that push a Jair Brown or someone else out of the class? And then you don't get Jackson because he's still a huge long shot. And then you're scrambling. So I think that's the key thing to watch in the fall is kind of what happens there. But like I said, I like them to keep Brooks. I like them to keep Brown. Stokes seems pretty low key right now. He seems to be the one guy also. Maybe Stokes is the most solid guy. Maybe he's the most solid because he seems to be pretty low key. That's kind of an Armwood thing, I guess. Those kids seem to be pretty low key, but it just I don't know. It's going to be weird. The Singletary one, that's going to be a fist fight.
Yeah, it is. I just have this hunch that they're going to keep him. I actually think Ryan Turner might be the one.
Yeah,
that is the most at risk, and I think Jair's more solid after the visit than people thought. If he went and took the Notre Dame visit, he still could take it in July or September, or October, November, December. But I think that they, at least for the time being, kind of calm that storm. And, to your point, can they get a Will Johnson? Can they get a Demoni Jackson? Well, maybe then you look at your options. But I don't see Will Johnson flipping probably never, but unless there's a coaching change with Jim Harbaugh. Yeah. And there's absolutely no ties whatsoever to the new staff, and they're just not comfortable, and it's late in the process and it's getting close to signing and you're panicking and okay, I know Kerry Combs, I know Ohio State, let's do this. I don't see Demoni Jackson at all. And I think they're going to get Branch. Not sure on Xavier. I think that one, I feel good that Ohio State leads, but Notre Dame and A&M scare me a little bit there. And so I think they at least get Branch, but let's say they get both of them. That's 7 DBs. I don't know if they're going to take 7. I mean, maybe if it's the 7 that they would have right now, maybe. But if they lost Jair Brown, do they replace him with someone who's not up to that level? I don't think so. We'll see how it goes. It's going to be interesting.
I think this could end up at 6. If I had a gun in my head right now, I would say 6.
6. Yep.
And that could be adding 2 and subtracting 1. Yep. I don't think it's just going to be adding 1. I think right. I think they could add 2, and then someone looks around and says, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Yeah,
but
that's how I'm seeing it. So if we had 6 defensive backs, the 2 linebackers, that's 8. Let's say it's 5 defensive linemen, that's 13. We'll go with 4 offensive linemen, that's 17. And then the 2 tight ends is 19. The 4 receivers is 23. The running back and the quarterback, that gets us to 25. So I think that's pretty much where they're going to be at. There might be some variables here and there, maybe one more on the offensive line, one less on the defensive line or something like that. But 25, if that's what we're using. And I think if it ends up like we just talked about, it's going to be a pretty darn good class. So definitely, definitely follow us at buckeyescoop.com. If you're not a member, it's probably going to be the time to join with, commitments coming throughout July, fall camp coming right after that. We got that official visit weekend at the end of, or not official. I guess it could be an officials, but there's going to be a lot of unofficial visits that week in July. Ohio State's going to be hosting a big barbecue event that we'll have full coverage of. And then fall camp starts a few weeks away from the season. It's going to be really exciting. So, as I said, if you're not a member of buckeyescoop.com, definitely log on, become a member. And if you're looking to refinance your home or buy a new home, Todd Pennington's your guy with Revolution Mortgage. Go to www.revolutionmortgage.com/tpennington. For Buckeye Scoop, I'm Alex Gleitman. Thanks, Marc Givler, for joining the show, and we'll see you all next week. This episode of Around the Oval was brought to you by Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. If you've been thinking about refinancing or buying a house, check out our sponsor, Todd Pennington with Revolution Mortgage. They offer low rates for refinancing and home purchase loans, including first-time home buyer programs, down payment assistance, and cash-out home equity loans. Check out revolutionmortgage.com/tpennington.